potatoes have pushed their way through, and I shall need to be thinking about composting them up very soon. Remember I said, sort of beginning of April, to always keep your covers handy, because you never quite know when you're going to need them. These covers were predominantly on here to stop the chickens scratching around the emerging potatoes. But actually, here in our Norfolk garden this week, it's been particularly cold and it's been particularly wet. Now, we haven't seen a big frost. The soil has not been white, but it's got down to 2, maybe 1 degree. And we've seen frost, well, on our extension roof, haven't we?
Yeah, on our kitchen roof there's been some ice. So it has been a bit chilly.
So the fleece has ensured that these have stayed good and healthy. You can see they haven't been nipped by any kind of frost. It's always handy and good practice to keep your row covers, or fleece as we know it is in the UK, handy. Don't put it away till the end of May. Now, in today's video, we need to complete our sowings for the month of April. Hello and welcome back to the No Dig Norfolk Gardener. Lovely to have you back here in our Norfolk garden, or to be more correct, our polytunnel. Most of the seeds that we'll sow today, these plants are not frost tolerant. Indeed, they don't even like it when it's really cold. And unlike the brassicas that we put out and the onions, you can get a cover over those. You can't with things like squash, because they're going to try and grow rampantly, and you don't want to curtail their growth. So toward the end of April, which is where we are now, is the best time to sow them. And don't even begin thinking about putting them outside into your plots until you know that all danger of frost has passed. Given the way our weather has been like this last few months, we could still see a frost here in May. So it could be June until these go out. They also grow big quite quickly. So use a large pot, or in this case, these are some large module trays that we were given, weren't we? They were going to be thrown away, and we thought, well,
gave them to us. Fantastic.
We thought rather than waste them, because they are those flimsy plastic trays, and as you know we normally use these, but we've actually run out of them now. We've sown so much that, and that's what I said. I think I said a year ago, probably a little more a year ago, when we did our gardening on a budget video, you just use what you can, and every year I tend to buy something else that increases our stock, don't I?
Yes, yeah.
You try and buy them all at once, it's going to cost you an absolute fortune. So if you are watching this channel and you're new to gardening, make use of what you've got. Go and see that video from last March. It's got some good ideas of things that you can use around your house that you'll be able to sow seeds into and raise crops.
We're going to start off today with sowing our Hunter butternut squash, and unlike Mr. W, who just randomly places these things in, I always like to sow them on their side, so they're sharp side up. I just push them into the compost, about 1/2 inch deep. There was 10 seeds in the pack, and I'm going to sow all 10. Not that we'll probably use all 10, but some friends and family will probably have some plants from us. So
they can be a bit unpredictable for germination, can't they?
We have found that before, haven't we? So just to be on the safe side, I'm just over sowing, I suppose. And now secondly, we're sowing some curry squash, which are a winter squash, known as the onion squash. I'm only going to sow 5 of these ones in the same way again, on its edge.
They're our old favourite. They keep really well, don't they?
They do. They're really nice, aren't they? And next, the yellow courgettes, which I don't know whether you remember from last year. We made a lovely lemon courgette cake, didn't we?
We did, yes.
Anita gave us the recipe for that, and that was so nice. I'm so looking forward to doing that again this year. So I'm just going to do 5 yellow. So that was the yellow courgette, and that was goldener, yeah. And these are the green courgettes called Black Beauty. They were nice last year, very good. Push them in a bit further, that's it. Give them a bit of a covering. And then in the last row here, I'm going to sow some rainbow chard, and I'm going to multi-sow these. So I'll just pop them in around the garden. Might even end up with my flower garden, because I do think they're really quite pretty. So I'm going to put about 5 in each cell.
Thank you, Mrs. W.
Okay.
Now, as we approach the end of April and tip into May, we need to be thinking about our succession planting. And the next 2 lots of seeds that I'm going to be sowing are doing just that. To ensure that we have brassicas to eat sort of October and November through into December, we need to be thinking about sowing those seeds now. Now, skipper literally takes 80-85 days and it forms its head. That's what we've got out in the plots at the moment. So they're going to give us our harvests for the summer months. The ones that harvest in late autumn and those that will harvest in winter, they need a much, much longer growing season, well over 100 days. So that's why they are sown now, to go out into your plots. The first one I'm going to start with is a Savoy cabbage, and that is a variety called courgettes. I've been wanting to try this variety for some time, but we just haven't for whatever reason. And these actually, they will give us harvests from September onwards right up to December. Now, just as we do with all of our brassicas, we sow them into these modules, 2 seeds per cell. And I want these to last us, so I'm actually doing a full tray and not just a half tray.
Cabbages they do sit quite nicely in the ground usually, don't they?
They do.
Unlike cauliflowers that really you just have to harvest when they are ready to be harvested.
Yes. Those brassicas are some of the most hardiest vegetables that you can grow out in your plots. So they will stand without blowing or thinking about bolting. Now, one thing I didn't say while Mrs. W was actually sowing the squash, you probably saw that she didn't use the vermiculite. And the reason for that is because they are particularly large seeds, and they're able to push their way through, whereas brassica seeds and some of the others we sowed earlier in the year are much smaller seeds. You could put vermiculite over the squash, but we've just chosen not to do on this occasion. And that's cabbage, courgettes. So the next things I want to sow are some cauliflower, and it's a variety called Boris. And this will give us some cauliflower to eat during the months of September, October and November. But unlike with the courgettes, I'm not going to sow all of them into this tray. There will be another sowing next month, because as Mrs. W pointed out, cauliflowers you need to harvest when they're ready. You can't leave them in the ground, otherwise they're just going to rise and try and form a flower stalk. They can do that at any time of the year. I shall come back to this tray late next month. By then these will be up here somewhere, and I shall drop the next lot of seeds into there. And you know, succession planting, really all it is thinking ahead. What's going to be ready in my plots? What room do I have in my plots? Normally I'm sowing something that's going to replace something that's harvested in the plots. These won't, because they'll be ready to go out, well, within the month. 4 to 5 weeks and they'll be out there, and there is a space reserved. And you've probably noticed when we go around the garden that there are some spaces within our plots. They're reserved for things like these. The next thing I'm going to sow is another form of succession planting. Only these have no dedicated space in the plots. They're not going to be replacing anything, because they are spring onions. You can see that we're busily working our way through these overwintering spring onions that we put into the polytunnel, and the ones we put out last month, they're coming on really well. So we will have that continuity.
And we've got a few in the veggie raised bed as well, haven't we, which we put out last winter.
We have, and they're looking strong too.
They are.
So the key word there was continuity. Continuity, succession, sowing. These will not go in the polytunnel. They will not go in the greenhouse. They'll be dotted about in the plots where I have space to put them. For us, it's generally down the sides of the plot where we leave space so that we can lift the covers of our brassicas to get to them, to do any maintenance, and indeed to harvest them. And we normally leave a generous row beside the pea and bean tunnel, and in the other plot from the pergola upwards, where we put the beetroot and the turnips. There's actually nothing on the other side at the moment. For the spring onions, as usual, we multi-sow them. I aim for 8 to 10. There could be a few more in there, there could be a few less. Don't let it bother you, it really doesn't matter. But somewhere between 8 and 10, and you'll twist these out, the largest ones, if that's the way you want to do it, or you can just harvest the whole bunch together. And they do really quite enjoy growing together. This variety is Ishikura, and we've switched to that now for our, well, these will be summer harvest, won't they?
Yes.
In about 10 weeks' time, we'll be well into summer. The reason why I don't actually grow them now in the polytunnel from now onwards, or the greenhouse, it's going to get hot in here. It's the idea of the covers, and at that time of the year we're going to be growing the plants that do like the heat. Let's close those up. And a bit of vermiculite on them. There's the label. And next month I should do exactly the same thing. I'll sow another 10 cells and then we'll put those out into the plot, and we'll continue doing that right up to August. Sowing is completed for April. Now, some people also like to sow their runner beans and French beans during April. Myself personally, I wouldn't go anywhere near it. It can still be cold. It can still be very cold at the beginning of May. And it's not just the frost you need to worry about with those plants. Actually, if it's a cold, windy, wet day and you get a lot of those at the beginning of May, they're going to sulk. Well, you know, because we've tried it. And you think, you're just not growing. They're not really going to like it. The French and runner beans are best planted out toward the end of May at their earliest. With the warmth, they will grow rampantly. But even then for us, I won't even sow ours during May. I need to wait until the peas on the arch have finished their harvest, and that's going to be June. And with things like the runner beans and the French beans, they germinate very quickly and they become very, very big plants quite quickly. So you'll need to be potting them on. So when I think that those peas are about 3 to 4 weeks from their final harvest, Mrs. W won't think that. She'll say, oh no, there are still 2 flowers on there. Yeah, I know, I've heard it before. When I do get to that point, that's when I shall sow ours. So on this occasion, unless you're doing the same as us, don't follow our sowing line on that. We have our particular reason for sowing them at the time that we do. And look to sow them beginning 2nd week in May. And by the end of May, you'll have plants up here that will readily cling onto their structure and grow away. Do let us know in the comments what you've been sowing. Let us know if you could live in a warmer part of the country than us and therefore get away with sowing your beans earlier. So let us know if you've done that, because then other people that live in the area that you live in, they could be doing the same. They might not necessarily know that until they read the comments. The comments really are very, very valuable. Have a great gardening week, won't you all? And we shall see you back here in the garden on Thursday.